VocalEye Almost Live Zoom. PuSh Festival Preview and Highlights. Hosted by Amy Amantea, with special guests Anika Vervecken, Steve Lambert, and Ruby Singh.
So welcome to VocalEye Almost Live. My name is Amy Amantea. My pronouns are she, hers, and I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator for VocalEye. I'm the host of these Almost Live events, and I'm a member of the blind community and really proud to be so. And before we get started with tonight's offering, I want to welcome Deanna into the space, who is our volunteer joining us from Adler University, who's going to offer our land acknowledgement this evening. So Deanna, the space is yours, my friend.
Thank you, Amy. Hello, everybody. My name is Deanna Jestrin, as Amy said, and I'm an intern at VocalEye. My family comes from the Statliam Nation, which is near Lillooet, BC on my mother's side, and European descent on my father's side. So I'm really happy to be here after a long break. It feels like a long break. And today I'd like to let you know that we are presenting to you from the unceded ancestral traditional shared territories of the Musqueam, the Tsleil-Waututh, and the Squamish First Nations. As we've discussed before, unceded means stolen or taken lands, taken without permission. It's important to me and to a lot of people who are looking at ways to heal the wounds of the past, the wounds of residential school. It's important to acknowledge and honor these nations, to show our deep appreciation and respect for the people who have been the caretakers of the land that we live on for at least 14,000 years. That's when the first inhabitants of Canada arrived here. So that's a long time and a long history, and really this recent trauma, it feels like a long time, but when you look at the grand history, that's a lot of time and wisdom seeped into these lands that we live on. Today, I would like to share with you the words of Dr. Lee Brown, who is an Indigenous elder and former director of the Institute of Aboriginal Health in the College of Health and Educational Studies at the University of British Columbia. I had to write that one down. That one it's a long title, and it's really important work that Dr. Lee has done. I really personally love listening to elders speak. When you're growing up in the culture and you're at a gathering and an elder speaks, as a child, you notice how quiet it gets. It gets really still and really quiet. And that's because there's a cultural respect that is really important. So in my culture, when an elder speaks, we stay quiet and listen because the elder holds great wisdom. And they are there to pass it along to me and through me to future generations. So Dr. Lee Brown talked recently on Zoom. He gave a presentation and he talked about the gifts of illness. And that really struck me, especially right now as we are living in this unprecedented time. He described illness in terms of being little or big. So little illness or big illness. And little illness is experienced by the individual, something maybe like asthma or a common cold, whereas big illness is something like cancer or the pandemic that we're currently in. The big illness is a collective illness. So we're all experiencing it right now worldwide with this pandemic. And Lee described it as a gift, because when we experience illness, it is being sent to us as a teacher. It teaches us about what we need to change about the way we live and the way we exist in the world. So I think that's really important to pause and think about, right? He also said to thank your illness. And I thought, wow, what an interesting way to experience illness. To thank it. He talked about his own personal challenges and overcoming of illness and being really grateful for those lessons. So Indigenous culture is collectivist as opposed to individualistic. In Indigenous collectivist society, the health of one person affects the health of all people. And it's believed that when an individual is sick, the whole family is sick. And it's really the responsibility of the whole family to work together to help heal the individual. So imagine that in the context of this pandemic. I think it's really important to look at this teaching as a way for us to move forward as a society beyond the pandemic, because we are all connected As we always say, we're all connected. And I believe it's going to take all of us working together to heal ourselves and then heal society as a whole as we move forward. So with that, to each of you, I lift my hands upward, bent 90 degrees at the elbow, with flat palms facing toward me at eye level. And I say to you, all my relations. And when I do this, it is completely appropriate in your own space to lift your hands and do the same. That's just like an acknowledgement, like if somebody waved at you and you waved back. You can lift your hands if you choose to, you don't need to, and just acknowledge, yes, we are all relations. Thank you for being with us here at VocalEye tonight, and I hope you all enjoyed the show.
Thank you, Deanna. I feel like a broken record when I say I always learn so much from you in this space, and I really greatly, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate all your sharing of your culture and the history. And I think it's really important for us to listen to the words that you say. So thank you for bringing that to the space.
It's my honor.
It's my honor to listen. So welcome back, friends. Tonight is Wednesday, January the 19th, 2022. And tonight we're proud to offer you our Almost Live event number 68. Tonight we're going to feature some previews. Yes, I said previews of the PuSh Festival highlights. So normally when we do festival highlights, they're after the festival is over, but we're going to share with you some artist clips and some guest artists in the space before the festival happens. And this is a local festival here in Vancouver, and I'm going to bring in Anika Vervecken, who's their accessibility coordinator, and also a friend and describer with VocalEye and known to the community. So let's welcome in Anika and learn a little bit about PuSh before we meet our special guests tonight.
Hi,
Anika,
everyone.
welcome.
Thank
How
you so much for having us. Well, you know, our festival starts tomorrow, so I think stressed is an understatement, but you know, that's what festival life is like, but also very excited.
So Anika, I mean, you know, tell us a little bit about PuSh in terms of like how long has PuSh been around and where is it located in the Vancouver area? And I would also like to know about the pivot, right? Like what has, you know, PuSh had to do in the last couple of years in order to pivot because of the pandemic?
So the PuSh Festival, we're talking about it today. The first festival was in 2004, though in 2003 there was a PuSh like showcase or something. So it's been around for like 16 years now. I'm starting, 16, 17 years. And yeah, too many, too hard. It's located in Vancouver, and it's a performing arts festival. So it's theater, it's dance, it's installations, it is experiences, and PuSh really tries to bring like the cutting edge, newest, you know, things that will really open up the debate, and often things that will question like, oh, I didn't know this could be theater or performance, and you know, in ways that we might not have seen before. That's definitely what we try to bring. And it, you know, we in 2020 we just escaped. We had a really successful festival because it was in January, February, right before everything got shut down. Last year we had to move everything to online, and this year we thought we were going to have a fully in-person festival, and then Omicron hit. So there's been a lot of pivots, and and unfortunately, you know, this year, because everything happened so quickly with Omicron and last minute, we've had to cancel some shows, but we still have some shows and we still have some experiences, but we also have some online content.
They got a little bit of everything.
Yes.
Tell us, I mean, obviously we're not bringing everything to the platform tonight because that would, well, we'd be here for hours. Not that we don't want to spend hours in this space, but it would be overwhelming, right, to share everything. But what is it that that we're, you know, in terms of access, that we're going to be experiencing tonight?
So we've just selected all the low vision friendly shows. There was supposed to be 2 other ones on the docket, but unfortunately they had to get canceled. So I really hope that we get to talk about them next year or another time. You know, it goes from one show that's like a complete sound bath where it's purely auditory. There is no visuals in, like, they turn off the lights, literally. You go into a studio, to having a conversation outside of the library, to a music performance, and yeah, like a little, there's a little bit of lots of different things in there, and to, you know, an actual, like a theater show that has beautiful singing in it as well, and an amazing story. So it's got a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm. And just so for people who don't know what your role is with PuSh and what it is that you do and how long you've been at PuSh, maybe you could share a little bit about that.
I've been at PuSh, I think my first, oh shoot, now I think my first festival is 2016, though in 2015, I described the very first show in the PuSh festival that was described. I described it as in my job as a describer at VocalEye. And the next year I came on to help them with all access, and basically, you know, supporting folks who are blind or have low vision, deaf folks, hard of hearing folks, you know, accessibility audits for people who use mobility devices. There's a lot in it, but I would say that my job a lot of the time is like, I do the grunt work, but I don't make the decisions. We have an amazing low vision consultant, Christy, who's actually in the room right now. And I, you know, I couldn't do this without her. And it's really important to us that we don't make the decisions. We don't choose which shows get ASL interpretation. We have our deaf consultants for that. So I see myself as the person who kind of like does all the work behind the scenes, and who connects people. Like a lot of the work is one of the things that I realized early on is that, you know, people focus on stuff like VocalEye description, but then I'm like, you know what, why don't we tell low vision folks about Vox.Infold, which is purely auditory and they don't need description. And sometimes we create introductions so people understand some more about the visuals of a show that is, you know, it's a story, but you'd still like to know what somebody's wearing on stage and what the set looks like. And then, you know, we work with the artists directly and often put them in touch with our low vision consultants and have them work out what is important information that you want to, you know, pass on to people before they come and experience this show.
Yeah, all really important things, especially as we transition into a time where, you know, we're still sort of in a pivot, kind of in a limbo, and access looks different for different people, whether it's in person. But what I've noticed too is that, you know, some folks in the disability community aren't ready to come out just yet, and that the service providers, all of them out there are quite, I mean, they've had to pivot too. And so we just may not have as a community enough resources in terms of like people power to be able to offer like ASL for every show, because there just aren't enough interpreters out there, right? So, you know, where is it that the artists can look at what they're doing and maybe impact, put a little creative access in and open up their programming to other audiences?
Yep, absolutely. And it's one of the things that I'm passionate about is helping artists understand better how their work is or isn't accessible, and trying to convince them, you know, like find somebody in your community, find a deaf person, a blind person, a person who's on the spectrum, and talk to them about your show. Don't ask me. I get that question a lot of the time, and I'm often like, well, you know, I don't feel like I can answer that, but I'm going to send you Amy's email, or I'm going to send you Christy's email. Go to the source and talk to them. And, you know, that's something I'm very passionate about. And what I found sometimes is that artists start to realize, oh, you know, if I just change my show around a little bit, it suddenly becomes way more accessible. And helping them see that is really important.
And really just helping them think about access from the beginning of the process instead of at the end of the process, because then, you know, sometimes there are things you can integrate in that might have seemed challenging at the get-go, but really aren't that challenging. And I, you know, what I hear a lot from artists, and again, like there's all this willingness to want to, but there's a lack of resources and a lack of time and a lack of understanding. But I think that like I what I get from the arts community in general is that we really just all want a place to belong. And so that's a really nice thing, because that means that other artists want me to be in that space, as opposed to other spaces where I've been where it's like I don't feel like I belong, you know, and I won't be in any of those maybe civic spaces. But yeah, so I find that the arts community is very hungry for the knowledge and willing to try and you know, make things.
And that's the thing, like the arts world is often where we try a bunch of new things and then they become more mainstream. And and when artists think about their shows, like sometimes you get those people who are gung-ho, they want to do everything. And sometimes I tell them, hey, there's no shame in saying, I don't think this show is, the best suited for deaf people because I'm talking all the time, or I have a silent dance show. There's no harm in saying maybe this isn't the best thing for low vision, but to have that information out there and let people make their own decisions. Tell them, this is what my show is like. These are the barriers you might encounter, and let people make their own decision rather than making decisions for them.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing with us a bit about PuSh. I'm sure we'll get back into some of this when we do the Q&A at the end with our audience input. But, my phone says that it's 7:02, so I'm already over budget for the first event of the year. But let's welcome our first artist in the space, Anika. What are we talking about next?
Next, we're talking about everybody's favorite subject, capitalism.
Yes, well, that's a deep-rooted down the rabbit hole type of discussion. But that's okay. We're gonna get into this, and so. The name of the show is Capitalism Works for Me. True, false?
Yes. So this is it's not a theater show, it's an experience. It is a huge billboard sign, like
before you describe it, maybe we should bring the picture up and have you describe it with the picture on the screen.
Good idea.
Okay, so Rick, we'll get you to bring up Capitalism 1 as the photo, and Anika's going to walk us through the visuals of the installation, and then of course we have an artist to introduce.
This actually a picture taken in Times Square, so it's really amazing that Steve got to do this in Times Square. And there's a huge sign, like huge letters, Capitalism Works for Me underneath it. And then on either end, there's true on one end, false on another end. And underneath it, you see a tally, you see numbers. In this case, 83 people said true, 99 people said false.
Wow.
And it's a big sign. I think it's like 12 or 15 feet high. And it really is like the old school, like I'm thinking Vegas styles, like with the lamps in it.
The light bulbs. Yeah.
It'll be set up outside of the Vancouver Public Library and the downtown branch, and people can walk past, and if they're interested, they can strike up a conversation with one of the hosts, and who will they'll talk about capitalism, and they might play a bit of devil's advocate. We'll hear more from Steve about that, and at the end of that little conversation, they get to vote if it works for them, yes or no, and they get to push a button for that. Now so the show was supposed to start on Thursday. Unfortunately, it won't start until Saturday, so it'll be at the library on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, fingers crossed. And that's because we've had a lot of issues bringing capitalism into Canada from the US, believe it or not.
You're talking about the installation, right? Not the construct.
Full disclosure, I am totally stealing Steve's joke with his permission. The truck that is carrying the sign had an airline burst or something.
Oh my God.
And it was a very stressful morning here at the office. So everybody, fingers crossed that we can get this sign to come in and that we can actually start this on Saturday. So, and if anybody is like, a little bit worried, if they're like, yeah, I really want to come, but I want to make sure that it's actually happening, you can give me a call and I can absolutely confirm that for you.
And it's outdoors, so if you're feeling like you'd rather do an outdoor event as opposed to an indoor event, this is a good one to check out. So Anika, why don't you introduce Steve to us, because he's hanging around in a square, and and I think we'd all like to know who he is.
Yes, Steve Lambert is the one who created this amazing show, and who also has been throwing off all sighted people, because in all of the pictures and videos, he's got this beautiful big beard. But in order to be safe and wear a mask that seals properly, he shaved it. So we have a clean shaven Steve here who's going to tell us some more about this this really cool project.
Welcome to the space.
What's that?
I said, welcome to the space.
Thank you.
I'm really excited about this installation. I love installations in general, and usually they're not all that accessible to me as a blind person because, well, I think that's fairly obvious why they're maybe not so accessible. So, Steve, I want to know what sparked this idea for you?
Yeah, so I've been an artist for over 20 years, and I made a lot of different projects. A lot of them had to do with advertising and public space and things like that. But what I realized is all the time, like I was sort of talking about, but avoiding actually talking about capitalism.
Right.
And because I thought that if I did that, people would run away, basically, like the joke that I always make is that going up to people and asking them to talk to you about capitalism is saying, like, can I talk to you about our Savior, Jesus Christ? And like, if you're into it, you're into it. But most people are going to be like, I got other things to do. I don't know if you want money from me, like, I don't want to sign anything, and just get away as fast as possible. So, so as a figure out a way to talk about economics in a way that was both productive and reflective instead of reactive in public space, and have people attracted to it and want to do it. And that just became this fascinating kind of design challenge in my mind that I kept turning on. And that's kind of the beginning of it.
I'm going to just take a little step back, because I wonder, it's possible that we have folks in the space that don't actually know what capitalism is. And so before we get into that discussion, I wonder if, I don't know, can you give us a Coles Notes version of what capitalism is?
Yeah, it's not uncommon to not know. And like that's part of why the project exists,
Yeah.
Every city I've gone to, there have been people that are like, yeah, I'm actually not 100% sure I know what that is, so that I can vote on it. And it's basically like the economic system that we all live in. And that's part of the reason we don't exactly know what it is, because we've just always lived with it, right? So it's, a system based on profit and private property. And, there's all different kinds of takes on it. I have a very working class kind of background, and my parents were both in the church. So I have a particular perspective, just to be fair, about where I'm coming from. But so the one of the definitions is that you make money off of money, right, instead of off of labor. If you are really a capitalist, you make money off of the work of other people or investments, and what's fun about this is that I encounter a lot of people that are like, oh yeah, it works for me, but they don't have any money saved. They don't have they have debt or something. But so it's partly a little bit of having people think about what it really means for them, not just these ideas of like, oh yeah, I don't like dictatorships. It's like, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about something else, and getting them to think about, like, how does economics work in your life, and is it really serving you or not? And in some cases it really is, in some cases it's not.
Well, I guess this is the whole idea of having folks that are there to have these conversations with you as you approach the installation, right? Because I think innately people are going to be curious about this. Like Anika points out, this almost Vegas looking marquee sign that says capitalism on it, and this, like these voting polls. And there's something really interesting about that sort of visually, and even, I don't know if I'm making up words here, but even capitalistically about that whole idea, that whole structure. So I guess I'm curious about when you did this in New York, and maybe you've done it. Okay, that's the first question. Have you just done this in Times Square, or has this toured?
I don't know how many cities I've done.
Okay, so you've done this in lots of places.
That's an answer.
Yeah, Australia, Europe, and the United States. Yeah.
Okay. So that leads me into what my root of this question was about, do you notice a big difference? Because when Anika read out what it was like 80 something to 90 something, those numbers are pretty close for works and doesn't work. Are you noticing that there are similarities in other countries that this is touring in terms of the relationship of these numbers?
Yeah, I mean, there's something, of course, in common with Australia, the United States, Canada, and England and the Netherlands, where it's been. But the other part of it is that capitalism is a global thing. It's certainly working better in a way in those countries, but the numbers too are not like a full reflection of what people feel, because they only get to pick between true and false, and it's deliberately set up that way because people's feelings about it are really nuanced and personal. And so when you only say, well, it's just true or false, like you have to press one button, they'll reluctantly press it, but they're very much compelled to be like, look, I'm pressing this because blah, 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 or I'm pressing yes, but you have to know this also, and so it gets them to talk about it more. Whereas if it was like scale of 1 to 10, they'd be like, I think I'm a 7, and then they just kind of go away. So.
Wow. And what has it been like for you on the ground, talking to people, interacting? Like, I don't know, do you find yourself getting into heated debates? Or I'm so curious, what's that? Because that's a very like almost one-on-one human experience.
Yeah. And I'm really not trying to, like, that's actually the last thing I want to do is debate people.
Yeah.
Although there is like a form of that. I was just training a group of people that to engage folks, and like I learned through trial and error. I've talked to thousands of people about what works and what doesn't, and there's a tendency of people to want to like deal not in their own life, but like talk about much bigger, broader, vague things like totalitarianism versus democracy, and it's like, yeah, that's easy, or does capitalism theoretically as a system work? Not in practice. Like, yeah, I guess, but so the people hosting are guiding people back to like, let's talk about you, like tell me about your life, and sharing these stories. But for me personally, having done it with so many people, like I get to see certain patterns repeat in different parts of the world, and different like sort of patterns of thinking that people have. And I'll just give one example, which is kind of amazing and sad. So I'll say to people like, do you think capitalism works? And they'll say, oh yeah, it does if you work hard. Which, like, if you slow down and think about that, give it any more thought, it doesn't make sense, right? And I will say to them, like, I grew up in this family, my parents had their own business, I saw them work so hard, and in the end it didn't work. And they'll be like, oh well, you got to work smart too. And I heard that again and again, and what they're saying, the first thing I thought was like, this is cruel. Like basically you're saying people are poor because they're lazy and dumb, which also, if you think about it, is not true. But what I realized after is it wasn't as cruel as it seemed. It was that this is the story that people need to tell themselves in order to manage the fear that they have personally. If you think that no one thinks of themselves as lazy or dumb, everyone thinks of themselves as a hardworking, kind of smart person. So if you believe that, you're going to be okay. And in reality, we live in a world that there's not that kind of guarantee, and it's not as simple as that.
And there's an argument maybe to be had that those who are at the air quotes top of the food chain are top 1% or 2% that are gazillion chillionaires. They're not all necessarily hardworking, smart people.
Right.
They have often made their money on the backs of other people who have had no choice but to do the legwork, basically.
Right.
So there's an interesting argument to be made, maybe not an argument, but like a discussion to be had around the myths and the lies that we tell ourselves about who's making all this money and why they have deserved to make all this money, and how they
those dreams are motivating to people, but they're not necessarily true. And there's another thing that reminds me of. I've worked on in the last 2 years on the on making sure that the COVID vaccine was freely available, accessible to everyone, and affordable at the point of delivery around the world. And especially located in the United States, right? The Moderna vaccine was developed entirely in our almost entirely in our National Institutes of Health and paid for with federal funds. And Moderna never had a viable product before. And so they used all this public research at universities, put the thing together. I mean, they didn't actually even put it together, they just sold it. And this is like the system that we have for developing pharmaceuticals in the US. Like all the risk and the R&D is done in universities with federal funding. And then the pharmaceutical companies take the last bit and sell it. And it doesn't make any sense. And they're literally not doing the hardest work of it, which is the research, you know? So
that's so interesting when you talk about that in terms of like the federal fund, that the taxpayer funded the research, and then the independent corporation comes and reaps all the financial rewards, where really they should say, hey, taxpayer, you you contributed to this, we're going to put this back into the social pool, or we're going to cut you each a check for X amount, like whatever, right? But it's what an interesting point you make about that again, I think like it makes sense as you talk about it, but it's not the first thing that cues to my mind when I think about this stuff, because we've lived in this system for so long that you're just kind of floating on the breeze, you know?
Yeah. And in the US, like the myth, I mean, what reminded me of that is how you talked about the myth, but the myth that pharmaceutical companies are doing all this research and so much of it doesn't work out. And so that's why drugs cost so much, you know, when really they're not doing any. And that they haven't even tried to claim ownership of the patent because they know they would lose. Like it was a very contested thing in the US. And yet they will not share the research that they've done about how to produce it with other countries that could be producing the vaccine.
And spreading it.
It's like, is this the best system for public health? No, I know the answer to that one, you know? So
are there other like, because I just love hearing you talk about this stuff. Are there other glaring examples of capitalism that you can just sort of throw in the space? Because again, I think it's a great reminder to check our assumptions and to think about these things from different angles.
Yeah, well, like I said, I come from a very particular perspective, but what I try to do with people is like figure out what they think and then kind of get them to think a little bit more deeply and move them a little bit. So when we were in Times Square, you know, Times Square is a tourist destination now, and it's covered in advertising, and like we would be talking to people, and a guy in a costume Iron Man superhero costume would walk by that's like getting his picture taken with people for $5. It's weird. We were right in front of the Disney store. You know, there's an M&M store. It's super weird. But it was also known, you know, prior to Giuliani as this like center for sex work, porno movie theaters, and drugs and weapons. Like that's where you would go, and crime. That's where you would go to get mugged, to get high, to, you know, like to see it, to get laid, whatever, you know, and you pay for all of it. And so when people would say, oh, you know, of course capitalism works, look around us. And I would be like, well, you know, when, you know, Times Square in 1970, when it was full of sex workers and drugs, that also was capitalism. And they would be like, oh, right. You know, it's the free market. It's it's a black market, but it's basically at that level unregulated. There are regulations if you do too much of it. If you get too big as a drug dealer, then the government steps in. But those kinds of markets are very libertarian and very open, you know?
Yeah. Are there any, from your perspective, if you feel like sharing, any examples of capitalism that actually, I don't want to say actually work, because again, as you say, it's a nuanced thing, but are there examples of where you know that it has been of benefit or works well, or countries that are harnessing this in a way that is productive. I don't know.
Yeah. I'll give you two examples. One is co-ops, right? Like worker-owned co-ops, I think they avoid a lot of the problems that can be inherent in it. And there's huge ones, it's not just like some natural food store in a nice part of town, but REI in the United States is a huge like sporting goods national chain, and it is also a co-op. So like I'm a member of the REI co-op, and it just operates differently than other corporations. They don't open on Black Friday, which is like the day after our Thanksgiving, and it's the biggest shopping day of the year. They're just not open that day out of principle, which shareholders would not accept. But members are like, cool, So the other example I'll give is I talked to this woman in London, and she was like, well, I understand, blah, blah, I have to say that works because I'm a business owner. And I was like, well, what, that seems like it might even make it harder. And she's like, it is hard. But I think of being a business owner as like a service. And I think of all the people that work for me in it and all the people that we serve as a form of service, right? So I feel this responsibility for all my employees. They depend on the business and on me to feed everyone in their family and all that support that goes out. And it's like this network. And if we fall short, I'm the one that like I take the cut first, which is like very much was my experience with my parents' business, that this deep responsibility to their employees and to make payroll consistently every week on time, no matter how hard it was or what the cash flow problem was.
Yeah.
And that sort of, it was like, right there, and that's like, it's a very beautiful thing, it's like allowing all these people to flourish in a way. But I still wonder if that's an exceptional person and how we make the system work like that. Like there's all these different, capitalism is different in different countries. Capitalism in Canada is different than the United States. Healthcare, for one, but it's implemented differently in Sweden and all these different places. And so there are adjustments we can make, and we live in a democracy. We can make these changes, and I think it's thinking about how we get all the benefits of it, because there are benefits, without so many of the drawbacks.
Right. Maybe the two of you can share, and I'll invite Anika to talk about this first, but if I'm walking up towards the Vancouver Public Library, which is down on Georgia and I don't know.
It'll be on the other side of it where there's like the more open space, which is Homer and Robson.
Okay. So there's nice big open space there. That makes total sense to me. If I'm meandering in this space trying to find this installation, like how are you all trying to make this accessible for folks in the blind community, specifically because that's the community we have in this space?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things is, and that's before you even get there. If you're not, if you're not familiar with that exactly, you can send me an email or give me a call, and we can send a volunteer as a sighted guide who will come and guide you to come and make it there. We definitely want people to take advantage of that. Normally we have free companion tickets, but this is free anyways.
I would say that
there's no capitalism in this. You're not selling tickets.
Right. I've been thinking about having people pay to vote true, but even if you didn't call and you forgot, if you just stand and look at the sign long enough, someone from our team will walk up to you. They're trained.
If you start to notice our white canes or our guide dogs, maybe you can cue in and say, "Oh, are you interested in the Capitalism Works for Me installation?" and open that discussion. Because the worst they're going to say is, "No, I'm here to take an audiobook out of the library." Maybe we've just stumbled upon it accidentally, which tends to happen in our community. But I'm really, really excited about this. I hope tech, that the truck arrives with the installation. Again, my vibes.
I got my fingers crossed.
That's going to happen, because I think this is, I mean, I think it's fantastic that you've been able to tour it in so many places, Steve. But it's a discussion I think we often ignore. One, because it's almost like what, like you said, it's like the religious discussion, or it's like, oh, do I share my, my real thoughts, or don't I, and all of that.
I don't want to tell people how much I get paid.
That's right, the whole nuance around that. Or sometimes it's just that you don't know enough about it to feel comfortable to engage. And you don't want to admit that it's like, I'm not sure I know enough to be comfortable talking about this. So I think that having these discussions is how we facilitate change at the end of the day. We just have to keep having these discussions.
Well, and for me, thinking about accessibility, that is like a whole other kind of accessibility, right? That you don't have to come to the work with like a knowledge of art history or economics or anything like that. It's really anybody walking up off the street, like hopefully there's a way in for them.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Steve, you're sticking around or coming back at the end of our presentation, right, to do the Q&A and see if we got some folks in the audience that want to ask questions about capitalism or the installation, all that good stuff. So with that, I'm going to thank you for like previewing this in the space, because I'm really excited about it. And we're going to introduce our next guest. So we'll see you, Steve, at the Q&A.
All right, thanks.
Awesome. Anika, what have we got next, my friend?
So next up, we have a show called Vox.Infold, and it's spelled like Vox.Infold all together. And this is a show that was created by Ruby Singh. And this show is a sound bath. So it's at the Loeb Studio, which is on Hastings Street. And I'm just looking at my schedule here. It will start tomorrow and run until Sunday. Tomorrow and Friday at 6:30 till 9, and Saturday and Sunday it's 2:30 till 8:45. And there's like lots of different sessions. It's a half-hour experience. And I think that the best person to describe both the show and the space is Ruby, who has joined us, who is he's done a lot of work in as a composer and soundscape designer, but he's also a poet. Welcome, Ruby.
Thank you so much. So glad to be here.
Really, I have to just say I'm a big fan, and many of us on this platform, Ruby, have experienced your work through the Indian Summer Festival highlights that have come to this space 2 years in a row, and so we've been able to experience some of your work digitally that way. So I'm a big fan, just putting it out in the space. So thank you for joining us tonight. As Anika sort of laid the foundation, what is Vox.Infold about? I'm so curious about this, because it's specifically a sound installation. So tell us a bit about this project. Ruby might be frozen. Or am I frozen?
No. It's Ruby who's frozen, hopefully.
Oh dear. He probably doesn't know that he's frozen either. That's the curse of Zoom, right?
Yes, he's probably talking up a storm.
Well, maybe Anika, you can.
I'll check in with him, and but we actually have a song from the experience.
Okay, let's do that. Let's get Rick to play the song from the experience.
Oh, there's Ruby.
Oh, okay. All right.
Can we hear him now? Donna, could you unmute
Hi there.
him? Yay!
Are we good? Should I stop my video just in case?
Well, we seem to have you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Let's hope.
I feel like I'm in one of those Verizon commercials. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? So I think you were just about to tell us a bit about the project.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is an a cappella project, which means all the sounds are created by the human voice. And it was recorded in the first winter of the pandemic. Very purposefully, I picked a group of BIPOC artists, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. We got some Inuit, Dene, Lillawat, who else we got in here? We got Dawn Pemberton, who's a Black Canadian, and myself and Shamek being South Asians, and Russell Wallace, Tiffany Moses, and the two sisters from the band Pilk Silk, which some of you might be familiar with as well, all as part of this project. And, you know, it was a bit of a feat trying to figure out how to stay safe and record vocals together. So we ended up being like 20 feet apart from each other with microphones and masks and shields and loop stations and sound systems, trying to like figure it all out as we went along. And as live shows weren't a possibility, I discovered this amazing space called Lobe Studios. And this is a sound-oriented space. So this space has, I think, a total of 35 speakers, 9 speakers in the ceiling, 9 speakers embedded in the floor, along with 16 different transducers, vibroacoustic transducer speakers, which actually vibrate the floor to the music. So not only can you hear the music in here, but you can feel it as well. And I'm actually at Lobe Studios right now doing the final bits and tweaks for the opening tomorrow. So I wanted to take a moment aside just to come say hi, because of course I'm familiar with VocalEye through Indian Summer Festival, and actually Indian Summer Festival is a co-presenter of this event.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Love that. So you were all in the same space together, Ruby, doing this? All of you, because that's a huge number of people. Well, like relatively huge.
We were at the Western Front. There's 7 of us in total, and we're at the Western Front. Tiffany Iolic at the time had an artist residency and offered up the space, and the space is, I think, like 2,000 square feet. So we had no problem having room.
Cool. I think maybe what we should do is, now that you sort of shared with us a little bit about what this installation is, we have a sound clip, and there's some visuals in here, but not too many, but maybe I can ask you to just describe some of the visuals if folks with partial are like, what am I looking at?
Yeah.
No, the magic frozen Zoom. All right, Anika. We're going to get you maybe to describe some of these. We'll play the clip, and then hopefully Ruby will be able to join us on the back end.
Fantastic.
So Anika, what are some of the visuals we might see in this?
Oh.
Absolutely.
Forgive us, friends. Technical gremlins are a real thing in Zoom.
I think we have him back, or no, we don't. And I have a confession to make. I have been so fascinated by the music. I've been playing it, and I can't remember what the visual for this one is, but because there's different songs to Vox.Infold, and a lot of them are actually available to listen to on YouTube. Right. And a lot of them, it's more like, you know, shadows turning into other shadows. And I believe for this song, it kind of looks like a ball. And you know, like those pin things that you kind of like put your hand on, and then on the other side you can see the outline of a hand. It kind of looks like a ball like that, but then there's different shapes, like I think.
So we're looking at this like some abstracty kind of images.
It's a lot more
abstract. Not a storytelling piece that we have to follow. Okay.
And there's no cool like outfits like with Vivek.
yeah. Okay. All right. So I think what we'll do is we'll get Rick to play Vox.Infold. And it'll last about 3 minutes, and then hopefully Ruby will be back.
I'm hopefully back on here. I jumping on from my cell phone. We'll see if,
we can hear you, Ruby. We're gonna just play the audio clip, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Wonderful.
Very nice.
The applause was amazing.
I'm so curious, and I can hear one of my favorite sounds is the Inuit throat singing. It's such a treat to my ears and such a gift to my soul when I hear this. But as it all comes together, so now I'm so curious, Ruby, about the process in terms of like, okay, so it's a cappella. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
Is this I don't speak music, so you'll have to forgive my language, but I'm
no problem at all.
Choreographed or written, or is it like improv where everybody just gets together and they riff and they make sounds and then you mix them? Or what's that process like of putting something like this together?
It's really a combination of all of those things. Okay. I came to the project, I was leading the project. So I came to the project with a bunch of ideas. But I bring those ideas to people, and these are incredible singers, so they just make them way better.
Yeah.
And then we're riffing in the space, we're jamming, we're kind of like bouncing ideas back and forth and growing them that way.
And I can really, even without being in the sound space, I can almost feel in my body what it would be like to stand there and be surrounded by this type of, these different sounds that are coming from different directions and emanating to the floor and vibrations. And that, I think it really sort of, I don't know, tickles my nerves a little bit, if I can say that. Like it's really quite exciting to think about that. So I'm wondering, in terms of, because Anika said this was like a half-hour experience. So are all of the pieces done a cappella? Are there any pieces that have lyrics in them? Like what can we expect from a sound perspective?
Yeah, so it's like set up as a journey, and it's actually lasts about 45 to 50 minutes.
Okay.
And so we gently bring you in through the large toning of many voices, and then we drop into some rhythms and some pulse, and then you'll hear some polyphonic poetry throughout it. There'll be beat oriented pieces, and also more ambient pieces that are a little bit more, I think, thought provoking. And just the overall piece doesn't shy away from grief, because it was something that we were all very much feeling at the time as well. And for me, it was really, whenever I'm making music, it's more important to kind of follow the impulse of where we are, as opposed to pushing it to be something that it doesn't want to be.
That's sounds to me like it's a very important piece of the journey, right? Like, why would you want to push yourself to do anything that it's not organic and doesn't come from a creative place?
Exactly. And in this space, it's a whole nother way of listening to it. What you're hearing right now is a stereo mix, but what I did here was I spent 3 weeks choreographing the movement of all these sounds in this space with all these various speakers. So the voices really do start dancing around you.
I can feel that essence of that, which it percolates in me, and I think it's going to be really exciting to have this full body experience. If you're a hearing person, to be able to be in this space, and maybe if you're not a hearing person or have low levels of hearing, some of the vibro tactile stuff that happens in this space, you could probably get some real benefit and enjoyment and a real cool experience out of that too.
I hope so.
I love that. So, Ruby, I know Anika started off by saying that some of this content is or will be available on YouTube for people to listen to. Of course, it'll be in stereo, but are there ways that people can access this if, because we've got folks that are not living in the Metro Vancouver area that won't necessarily be able to show up, or we'll just say won't be able to show up, but how can they access some of the content if they want to listen to it on their own time?
Awesome. Well, we have a couple of singles out from the album already, and so those will be available on both YouTube and like all your various streaming services. You can also go to Bandcamp if you want to support the work. And then I will be uploading as well. The album will come out on Bandcamp at the end of the month, the full album. At the same time, I'll also be releasing a binaural journey, which is we've transformed this installation and this choreography of the sounds into something that will sound really great in headphones as well. So it's like
awesome.
a separate mix and a different journey, so that I know that a lot of people can't make it down here to the space. I wanted to find a way for people to be able to access those sounds.
Cool beans, my friend. I think that's awesome stuff. Okay, Ruby, are you joining us for the Q&A in another 20 minutes or so? Are you coming back? Or are you like back on your creative brain and
I'm back in the kind of creative brain, and I got to finish this install here. I only got a little bit more time to just kind of tweak the final bits.
All right.
But if I can, and we feel like we're far enough along here, I'll definitely come on back. But in case I don't, just really want to send out a heart-filled invitation for folks to come experience the work. And especially this space. If you don't know about this space yet, I think it's just one of the most, it's literally the best space I've ever been in to listen to music. So I just want to invite folks down, and I'll have the ability for you to listen to it online very soon too.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ruby, so much for joining in the space. Maybe Anika will poke you when we get to the Q&A, and if you can pop in, great. If not, please, no pressure, because the art is the work. and we want you to be as prepared and as, I guess, not as exhausted as you might be. So, do a little self-care, my friend, is all I'm saying.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for taking a break to be with us.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Do feel free to send me a little text, Anika, and
I'll do that.
See what I can do.
Awesome. Thanks,
Awesome.
Ruby, for joining us.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right, Anika, my friend, last but not least, what are we sharing next in the space?
Last but not least is I swallowed a moon made of iron. And the second part of the title is the original title, but in Chinese, and I say Chinese because it's written so in Chinese characters. And I don't know if you may have heard this story, but there was a young poet who worked at the Foxconn factory in China, where they create a lot of components for Apple products. And we're not, people were not being paid very well, and he living in dire poverty, I would say. And he was one of those workers, and he wrote some amazing poetry that, of course, like with so many amazing artists, didn't really make it out onto the world platform until after he died, after he committed suicide. And Joe Conkey, who is joining us here, is an artist, and he is currently residing in Taiwan, in Toronto. And he took these poems and put them to music. And that show is coming to the Waterfront Theatre on February 4th, 5th, and 6th. And this show will also be available online. It's actually going to be filmed on the 4th. And then on the 5th, it's going to be like, it's all the time to do all the editing. And then it'll be available online for streaming for about 48 hours, maybe a little bit less, on the 6th. And people can access the show that way as well. And one thing that I want to add to this is that, so Conkey is singing in Mandarin. If you come to the theater, the translations of the poems will be projected onto the screen. So, we talked a lot with Conkey and also with Christy. And what we are doing is we're having Braille versions of these poems printed. And well aware, not everybody in the low vision community uses Braille, but we just want it there to be an option. And we're printing enough so that if somebody comes and wants to use it, they can actually take the copy home. Because, and that was actually also a discussion with you, Amy, like, we're going to reuse these. And that's when I discovered that you can't spray alcohol on Braille, because then you
lose the dots.
Then you lose the dots. That was a learning experience for me. Yeah, so we have that there, and I have to say, Conkey's been really amazing in just in being open-minded towards all the accessibility. You know, he's also created an introduction for deaf and hard of hearing folks, and there's going to be a relaxed performance, and he's really, you know, quite dedicated to this. Yeah, it's quite a beautiful show. And I know that Conky had been with us a little bit earlier, because I saw him in the list, but like we said, I know that it was going to be a huge, big day for him today, and it might have been just a little bit too much to stick around. So,
well, maybe what we'll do with some of that context is we have a song clip. It's about 2 minutes long. And friends, the song is in Mandarin. It's a really, really beautiful song, and it's archival video. So it's not necessarily meant for broadcast quality. We'll just say that. So it'll be different when you're streaming it, when it's, you know, really purposefully filmed for that purpose.
And also, if you want, I could read the poem before we listen to it.
Yeah, so that was exactly what I was getting into. So Anika's got a version of the poem that is in English, I guess. And she'll read out the version, and then we'll play the song for us all to experience. And if Conky can join us, great. If not, then we'll move on. But Anika, I'm going to give you the floor to share the poem.
Yes, and I'm just, of course, I accidentally closed the
because
window.
this is what he's done for the whole show, is taken all of these poems and
yes,
and put them to music, right?
Sorry, and of course,
we can also play the song first and have you read the poem after.
Oh, I found it. Sorry.
Okay. All right.
I swallowed a moon made of iron. I swallowed a moon made of iron. They called it a screw. I swallowed this industrial wasteland, this order form for unemployment. Youth, baser than machines, died long ago. I swallowed haste, swallowed displacement, swallowed pedestrian bridges, swallowed a life overgrown with rust. I can swallow no more. Everything that I have swallowed now gushes from my throat and coats the ground of my homeland with a shameful poem.
Wow, I was not expecting that. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's the right time to dive into the song. So Rick, when you're ready, can you play I Swallowed a Moon Made of Iron, please? It's such a beautiful sound. And even though Mandarin is not a language that I speak, you really get this this vibe from the tone of the music. So I'm wondering, and I'm guessing we don't have Conky in the space with us at the moment, but I'm wondering, Anika, if you can share with us a bit about what more we can expect from this work if we engage with it online, because it sounds like you can go in person, but you can also experience it through streaming, which would make it accessible for everybody in the space. So yeah, tell us a little bit about what we can expect from this show.
So it's basically really musically focused in that he has created composition for each song, and this is a very mellow moment. For reference, we only made it into line 3 of the poem.
Right.
And it gets a lot more intense, and there's moments where it's it almost feels like he's screaming some of the lyrics. But he takes a pause in between each, and sometimes he'll walk and for example, just walks to the other side and takes a bit of a moment in between songs. But other than that, it really is about these poems, which are absolutely gorgeous, but also heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
It is, like I just experienced it reading this one poem and then listening to just some of the lyrics. It's not, it's not a lighthearted show, and there's no like talking in between. It's really focused on the music.
And is Conky always at his piano, or is he using other instruments throughout the performance? Or
he is always at his piano. Yes. That's the instrument that he uses. Well, and his voice.
Yeah, absolutely. And from an access perspective, like I'm wondering about, there are captions, but that's kind of lost on me. But if I were to sign up for the streaming performance, would it be possible to have these poems emailed as part of that package so that I could read them in advance or check out them afterwards, compare them to the songs? How are we able to do that to open up that access?
Yep, absolutely. And so I have them in a document, and I'm just reworking it to send it to the Braille printer. But I will also put them with Conky's consent on the website as a link. But definitely, if anybody wants them even before that, then we're like, my only thing would be like if there's copyright things, but I don't think that there is. But we're super happy to make that available to people in large print. Like we considered doing large print, but in a theater environment, like large print is not really going to be that helpful because it's a very dimly lit theater. But if people would like to come to the performance and just have a screen reader read them so that they can prepare that way, or have large print versions, then we definitely will make that available to them.
Okay. It's been a real treat to be able to preview a festival, because typically what we do is highlight after the festival is over, and sometimes after a festival is over for a month or 2 months, or sometimes even more, like not so recent to us. So this is all sort of feels like it's happening in real time and sort of imminently approaching.
Oh, tell me about it.
Yeah, I can only imagine what your anxiety level is like, as all the final pieces have to come together and then going through the motions. But PuSH has a gift offer for everybody in the space. So I wonder, yes. I mean, I was gonna let it out of the bag, but I think it's better coming from you. So what's the gift?
We would love to offer anybody a streaming, an opportunity to stream I Swallowed a Moon Made of Iron, which is the show in the lineup that we talked about today that we have as an online version. So anybody who emails me at access@pushfestival.ca, that'll also be in the thing that gets sent out. I will set them up with a streaming link to the show. And we also have 3 pairs of tickets to any of the low vision shows of people's choice that we have availability for. So
for people that live here in Vancouver and want to go see an in-person show.
Absolutely. But Capitalism, you don't even need one. So you can just show up and go have a chat and with one of our hosts. We've got 5 hosts, I think. Yeah, and we have a deaf host, which is really exciting too.
That's
at Capitalism.
Yeah, awesome. That's a really generous offer on behalf of the PuSh Festival, Anika. So thank you for bringing that into the space. I hope that folks reach out to you to either get in-person tickets to take advantage of what the PuSh Festival has to offer, and streaming tickets. I know that I will likely be sending you an email after the show to get a streaming ticket.
And also, like, just as a reminder, any show that you come to, if you need support to get to the venue, because we know, like 2 of the shows we talked about are on Granville Island, which are hard to navigate as a sighted person. And, that's one of the things that I learned from VocalEye is it's not just about making the show accessible. If you can't get to the venue, well, so if anybody needs a sighted guide for that, please get in touch. And if you bring your own companion, then they can get a complimentary ticket. If you call us, we'll book them one.
Awesome. That's a very generous offer. And we will make sure that your contact information gets circulated. And friends, knowing that these things are happening almost in real time, days away, don't wait too long. Don't sit on the information and wait too long. Connect with Anika right away so that you can get the process started. So that's fantastic. Great. Have we still got, who have we got in the space left from our artist friends to just open it up to the community and see if there is questions about the PuSh Festival? Or
I see Steve.
Steve's still here. Wonderful. So we can bring Steve back in.
Oh shoot, I'm supposed to message.
Well, we've got Steve with us. So Anika, while you're doing your messaging, I will ask if there are folks from the community that want to unmute themselves, use the raise your hand function, friends. It's probably the easiest way to coordinate this and ask questions about PuSh Festival or Steve's installation called Capitalism Works for Me. I know that's something that I could talk about for hours. And look, we have a hand already from Megan. So Megan, why don't you share your question or your comments with the group?
That was amazing. I loved everything. I loved the preview. And the PuSh Festival starting when?
It starts tomorrow.
Oh my goodness! And what's happening on the 4th of February? Again, it with Conky is gonna be doing that on the 4th.
Yes. On the 4th, Friday the 4th. I Swallowed a Moon Made of Iron will be playing at 8 p.m.
Oh, cool! In Vancouver, right?
Vancouver.
In Vancouver.
That's the one, Megan. You can also get a link to stream it.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Well, I'll definitely will talk to my travel club, and I think they'll like that. They really like that.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll put that down right now. Actually, thank you so much. And so for Conky, he sounds amazing. He's kind of like it goes really soft, and then it goes loud, and then it goes soft. Right?
He gets a lot louder.
Yeah,
it's quite a creative.
Oh my gosh, he's amazing. And he comes from China?
I believe that he was born in Taiwan, but I please don't quote me on that.
It's too bad he wasn't able to stick around in the space because he was here and then he had to take off. But this happens because we're
having too much fun.
We're in festival mode.
I know. Yeah. But I'd love to see that. I'd love to tell you that. That'd be great, really great. And I think it's a good idea. Awesome. I'd love that. Thanks,
Megan.
Thanks,
oh,
Megan.
Man. And I like the throat singing and the vibes. Like, wow. Like I explained to my soul sister Coralie. I explained to her about the throat singing and the using the mouth for the drums and the instruments and the singing. Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it, Megan.
Oh, it was the best. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. We got a hand from Lori and then Tammy. We'll give Lori a moment to unmute. Oh, yeah, we got you. I hear you.
Okay. When you are you gonna have it on your website? Because I live here in the States, so I don't live in Canada. So will it be on your website for us out here to see some of the festival?
Yeah, so we have 3 shows that will be available online. And one of those is I Swallowed a Moon Made of Iron, which we listened to at the end. And if you send me an email, then I will set you up with a viewing link. And it's not geo-locked, so you can also watch it from the States.
Okay, so it's called Fall Festival, or how do you, because I can't read the chat on the page, on the screen.
It's the PuSh Festival.
A PuSh Festival, PUSH.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Festival. .com or
.ca. PuShFestival.ca.
Okay. Definitely. And your email information is on the website?
Yes, absolutely.
And we'll circulate it, Lori, in the follow-up email as well. So it'll be right at your fingertips.
Yeah, because I have a hard time reading the chat field on the Zoom.
Yeah.
No problem. We all have a little bit of difficulty with the chat.
But I will say I really enjoyed Ruben. Enjoyed Ruben, and I enjoyed the one at the end with the singing. Yeah, it's all really wonderful.
Great artists in the space.
Yeah.
Steve, I wonder, because your piece is an installation, is there any online way of being able to experience it? And I mean, I know that there's like this 1 minute, 22-second clip, but is there anything that is a little bit more interactive where people could really get a vibe if they can't be in the physical space? Or do you plan to film any of this while you're here?
There used to be a site, it's not up right now, where you could go and vote. But I do have a lot of videos from other cities on my site, and we, like in Times Square and in London, at the end of the day, we would take some of people after they would vote would talk about why they voted the way they voted, and some of the stories are really incredible. And they work as audio too, because it's just a person sitting there, and I think you can infer a lot from the way they speak and how they speak as to who it is, just as much as what they look like.
Sounds like I think Anika took some notes there.
Yep, I'm writing it down. Include Steve's website, and I'll make a note on there as well that people can find links to videos there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's take the hand from Tammy, and then we'll go to Christy.
Hi there. Thank you so much to all of you for a great presentation. It's been a while since I've been to the PuSh Festival. I guess a while since anybody's been to the PuSh Festival, but
yep,
it'd be great to go again. I'll contact you, Anika, about maybe 1 or 2 of the shows.
Awesome.
The one thing I wanted to say, and I don't know, is the first person here? I'm sorry, I can't recall his name. Yeah, is he here now?
She is not with us in the
Is she here? Okay.
She's not
back. She's not back. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So was Vivek
joining us from Toronto?
Is she in Toronto, or is she?
I think Vivek was joining us from Toronto, where it's now 11:30 at night. So, and that's the same thing for Conchi.
So she's not okay.
Yeah.
I was getting mixed up between the different speakers, so sorry about that. But no, I wanted to comment to her about. I agree with her that I think it's really great that she's doing a show about failure. And I mean, failure seems like such a negative word, but really we can learn from things that maybe we didn't quite get, or quite succeed at, or whatever, how we wanted to succeed, And so I just think the concept is really cool. And I just wanted to just tell her that I totally agree with what she's saying about, the whole thing about failure, and how we are really, really focused on celebrating successes, which is a good thing. But, if you don't succeed at something, you learn from that. And then it might help you to succeed or to do what you want to do in something else. Right. So I just think it's a really cool concept. I really liked her, just her thinking on that. So I just wanted to comment on that.
I think
I will pass on that message to her for sure.
And if you get a chance to see her show, Tammy, you should do the.
That is one of the shows I like to see. I love.
Yeah,
the 80s,
you should.
90s,
You should totally do the pop star fandom thing and try and get an autograph.
Oh wow! Okay.
You know what I mean? It's like you just see the show on how to fail at being a pop star, and it's like, no, I want your autograph.
Exactly.
I bet you she'd love that and appreciate the irony in that.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to pass it on to her, and I'm sorry she's not here. But yeah, it is late in Ontario right now, so.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Tammy.
And then just the final question: what was the name of the third show, Anika? I want to do some website research. So what was the name of the third one again? The one
Vox.Infold.
Okay, all right, great. No, I'll do some research on it as well. But thank you.
And the links will be circulated to Tammy in the
Oh well, tonight I might want to do some research.
Well, if you want to do it tonight, then
you never know, right?
Totally up to you. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And you have my number. Feel free to give me a call.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh, and it looks like we've got another square. It's like Hollywood Squares. Is this Ruby joining us again?
Indeed it is.
Indeed it is. Welcome back, Ruby. Awesome. That's fantastic that you're able to join us. I'm just going to acknowledge that we have a hand from Christy and then Megan again. So Christy, go ahead and share your comment or ask your questions. Give Christy a moment to unmute. I think you're unmuted. Oh, we can't hear you.
Uh-oh. I hate it when that happens.
My name's Christy. Can anybody
hear
me?
Yes, Christy, we can hear you.
Okay, hi. My question is, you say we're getting the last show as a link. How many months is it going to be up for? Is it just going to be up for one day?
That's a really great question. This link is actually only going to be up for about 36 hours. So it's not there for a very long time. And it'll start on Sunday, the 6th of February. So if you would like to experience that show, then you can send me an email and I'll help set that up.
And yeah, just don't wait to the last minute because there's a setup process. So it's not just a link that you can click on and it plays. You have to, there's a process. So
okay, yeah, I'm interested. Can you make sure I get the email, please?
Yeah, you're on the list. You're on the list, Christy. So keep your ears and your eyes on your inbox, and that'll come out in the next couple of days.
Okay.
From VocalEye. Okay, awesome. Megan, and then Karim.
And just to remind everyone, we have Steve here and we have Ruby here.
Okay. What theater is the concert going to be on the 4th?
On the 4th, it will be at 8 p.m.
What theater?
It will be at the Waterfront Theater, which is on Granville Island. It's the theater right next to the Kids Market.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Megan.
Karim, my friend, you're up.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Anika.
Hi, Karim.
Ruby. Hi. Yeah, sorry I joined in a little bit late, so I missed the first half. But I understand you're going to be sending out an email with all the shows you highlighted this evening. Is that correct?
Yep, we will definitely do that.
Okay. And the other question is for Ruby there. Where is the Low Studio located?
Ruby's on mute still, I think.
Okay.
I just give him a moment to unmute.
Hey folks, I don't know what's happening again.
Okay.
I'm gonna leave and come right back. 1 second.
Okay. Well, it's the okay.
I can answer that question in the meantime, and you can think of another question to ask him. But the Loeb Studio is on it's on Hastings, and I believe it's between Princess and Heatley. So it's like Strathcona area. It's across the street from the library on Hastings there, the Strathcona Vancouver Public Library.
Okay. Yeah, so I have to figure out a way to get there.
And did you have a question for Ruby as well?
No, that was the question of where it is.
Karim, did you were you here when we were talking to Steve about the Capitalism installation?
That's where I came in, so I didn't hear what it was about, but that it's at the Vancouver Public Library.
Yeah, it's a really interesting conversation, a voting system around capitalism, which I think probably is quite intriguing to a lot of folks who are getting involved in these discussions. So if you're out and about, I would encourage you, because that one's free, and Anika's offering guides to check that out. And folks, if you get to check any of these things out, share with us in the space when we meet up the next time or the time after that, because I'd love to hear what people's experiences were of this, of the PuSh Festival and these presentations. So Ruby, in the few minutes that you were away from us, were you able to get any work done?
Yep, actually I was able to set up all the lighting.
Oh my goodness. How are you feeling knowing that this experience is just like on the I don't know, the brink of happening? Like, are you nervous about it? Are you excited? Are you prepared?
I'm a combination of all of those things. I feel prepared, nervous, and excited. I think I'm mostly leaning towards excitement right now, though. I'm very worked a long amount of time on this, and really excited for people to take in the piece.
And for you, Steve, knowing that you're maybe in a bit of a limbo pattern at the moment with whether the installation will arrive or not, it's like, you know, the world gets in the way sometimes with road closures and things that happen and the barriers that pop up. But how are you feeling right now about this?
It'll get here.
Good.
It might not get here the day that we wanted it to, but it will get here.
It'll get here. I love it.
He is determined to bring capitalism into Canada.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to import some from the United States. It's going to go to Kelowna too, to the Living Things Festival.
Cool.
So if anybody has friends there, they can tell them about it. But you know, worst case, I think they would bring it back here after that. So something will happen. But with the amount of money that we paid to get it here, I'm sure that everyone is hustling. So
yes, art costs money, friends. That's the reality of it all. Are there plans for either of these projects? And maybe Ruby, I'll go to you first, but after the PuSh Festival, what is the next iteration of Vox.Infold? Is there a next iteration, or do you just focus on a new project?
There is the next iteration will be that we'll release the album into the world, and we got another we're taking another look at because you know presenting vocal music these days isn't the easiest, so we're looking at we're also working with Sammy Chin and some folks at the Chimerick Collective to think about how we might present this in some different ways, including VR and other ways for it to go ahead and live in the world.
And what about for the Capitalism Works For Me installation, Steve? I know you said it's going to go to Kelowna, but what happens after that?
It may go to DC or Washington DC or Birmingham, Alabama this fall. Both of those are in the works. Yeah, two very different places.
Yeah, no kidding. Almost polar opposites when you think about. Have you got any expectations of what you're going to experience in different parts of the States as it travels through the States? Because I don't live in the States, and many folks on the line are from the States, but how different these views are from just one state to the next in the United States.
I've shown it in Iowa and Boston and like San Diego, New York. A bunch of different places, not Birmingham though, but I have worked in these different regions. And I think, you know, there's always like regional particularities. If there's a military base nearby, if there's a big university, you know, like people sort of frame it within the things that are nearby, or like what's happening in the neighborhood. So what's great about it is wherever I go, I end up learning about something about the place. Like I've heard already a lot today about in Vancouver housing and real estate and, you know, the development here. And like how many buildings are empty and just bought as like a way of holding money, which is amazing.
Doesn't that, blow a person's mind to some extent? And I think there's a couple of, I want to say that there was a news report a few years back about a couple of like $20+ million condos that are exactly what that is. It's just somebody's holding their money there. Nobody's living there. And, but that's a lot of money to hold. And Canada just sort of allows this to happen.
Yeah, well, I've heard of it in New York with like, Russian billionaire, what's the word I want to use? Anyway, improper billionaire, something like that.
Improper billionaires.
Yeah.
Who've come to their money, maybe not the most honest way.
Yeah. And wanting to keep money here because their country's I say here, in New York. But I thought, like there's all kinds of weird, goofy, super rich people stuff that happens in New York City. And to learn about it and how much it's impacting this city is pretty remarkable,
Yeah. I wonder about, how we start to make significant change in those things, because sometimes that conversation feels so big that it's hard to even fathom what that looks like, or how we even like embark on a chunk of that.
So that is a book.
Can you,
and it took me 12 years to write, and it came out a month ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's the name of it?
Yeah.
It's called The Art of Activism, Your All-Purpose Guide to Making the Impossible Possible. And yeah, I did a bunch of drawings in it, which if you're low vision, you can get an ebook and zoom in and stuff. They're pretty straightforward, like two colors, red, black, and white. And then there's text that me and my partner we started an organization called the Center for Artistic Activism, and go around and train people around the world and work with people that are like trying to have more impact, but through creativity and culture. And cool. We took all those lessons and put them in that book.
Very, very cool stuff. What other projects have you got that you're working on right now, Steve? And I'm going to ask Ruby the same question, because y'all are so busy with all of the things that you do. These aren't the only projects going on. So what's coming up next for you?
For me, that organization, we just got a lot of support to work on democracy in the United States and trying to keep it. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, there's like things happening right now, literally right now. But we're trying to team up with artists, and a lot of people are approaching these problems, like, how we make it as easy as possible for people to vote, take away those barriers, like keep people's freedom to be able to vote in the US. But there's legal strategies, there's political strategies. What we're trying to do is work with artists and say, how would you go about approaching this, and like try to come up with some other ways that may move that forward in an unexpected way. And we've seen it work already, and work around the world. So artists have a lot to contribute, and a lot of different like talents that they can bring that can make activism more effective. And it definitely needs injections of creativity.
That's super interesting. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Gonna have to check that out. What about for you, Ruby? What's coming up next for you? What are you working on these days other than PuSh? Let's pretend PuSh is over. What are you focusing on next? What's next?
He looks like he's either holding very still.
Poor Ruby's not had. I think the Lobe needs to have a better Wi-Fi connection.
I'm trying over here. Is this working now?
We can hear you, my friend.
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm like under poor lighting in the rain here. Steve, your book sounds amazing. I can't wait to read it. A lot of my work comes from a similar philosophy. being oriented towards community and away from capitalism. And so it's really, really awesome that your installation is here, and it's great to hear about your work in the world.
Yeah, you too.
I myself, next up is, I have a couple different projects that I'm working on. I am producing the next Pilk Silk album, so I'm working on that. Also working on a project that is a place-based hip-hop project, which is looking at essentially hip-hop from the perspective of land and like what it means to be an uninvited guest on Indigenous territories. And how to grow a relationship with the land still. So that's all been happening through this. And so what we've done is gone to 5 different bioregions throughout BC and done a bunch of field recording and used biosonification technology, which allows you to take the electrical impulses from plants and fungi and turn those into musical notes and musical notation. And so we're having a interspecies collaboration place-based hip-hop project and doing a bunch of field recordings of animals that are in those various different bioregions.
Interspecies, say that again. Interspecies collaboration. Okay, there was a phrase there and it was so money that I can't grasp it.
Yeah, interspecies collaboration is what we're going for.
Fantastic.
So like cedar, I'm working on this actually right now too. Cedar is informing what the bass line is going to be and what the melody is going to be, and developing rhythms out of things like everything from thunder to the way that waves lap to the stepping on of bull kelp, all these various different things that we're doing that are pretty place-based.
That's gonna be a real sonic experience. Very cool stuff.
Yeah, speaking, and we're speaking to, again, large part of it is speaking to capitalism and its effect on the climate and the climate emergency and crisis that we're all in. Steve, I'm not sure if you know, but we've had like mad climate crisis going on in BC. Every 6 weeks or so, we're having a different kind of taste of the climate catastrophe to come. So yeah, just feeling kind of urgent with the work and supporting Indigenous land defenders and the activists that are in my community to help us build a world that might actually sustain it for our future generations to come.
Right.
I see we have a hand from Christy, so I'm going to give Christy some space to, it looks like she's unmuted. So Christy, we got a question or a thought or a comment to share?
Christy, also, just FYI, folks, I'm at 2%. We're gonna see how long
we're just about done here, my friend. We're gonna give Christy the last opportunity to speak. We'll do a prize draw, and then back to work you go.
Indeed.
Steve, it's Christy here. I'd like to know your ebook name again, please.
You could just find it through the Art of Activism. It's the publisher is OR Books.
Okay.
And I can put a URL.
It'll be, and we'll circulate it, Christy, as well in the post email. So.
Okay, thank you.
You'll have a link there that'll be nice and easy for you to grasp. Awesome. Friends, that's going to close our Q&A, and thanks for sticking around. Before we let everybody just go off for the evening, we have a prize draw, which we do every Wednesday night. And Anika's been through the drill on how this works. So I'm going to bring Donna from VocalEye into the space. Annika, have you been thinking about your call out word? Because Annika,
what else could I say than push?
Oh yeah, well, don't give it away just yet.
Oh.
Okay, Donna, I'm going to put you and Annika, you take it from here.
All right, Annika, I am, see you, Ruby. I think Ruby's signing off just in case, Ruby.
Thank you, Ruby, for joining us. You're welcome.
Bye, y'all. Thanks for having me.
Anytime.
Thanks, Ruby. And I also just wanted to say, while Donna's rooting around in the bag, she also did some research to let us know that Conky was born in Indonesia, but he grew up in Macau. And I didn't get a chance to put that in there yet. So thank you so much for looking that up. And
our fantastic VocalEye team in the background.
PuSh, it's Lori.
Lori's won a raffle prize. Congratulations, Lori. As you all know, we will connect with you by email to get you your prize.
I always enjoy winning.
I hope that's not the only reason you come on Wednesday.
No. Awesome. Not in any way, shape, or form.
Awesome. Well, thank you, friends, for joining us for our first almost live event after the new year. And thank you, Steve, so much for joining us in the space. I am really excited about the kind of work that you are doing. And I'm definitely going to continue Googling and checking out more about what you are all about, because I think this intersection of art and activism is really interesting to me. And as an artist myself, I'm trying to figure out how I do more of that in my artwork. So I think I got a book that I have to figure out that I get some tips from.
Yeah. They have always gone together.
Yes. So I love that. So thank you very much for bringing that into the space and sharing with us about the installation. So, and maybe I'll see you down near the library at some point.
Great.
In the upcoming future. And Anika, thank you so much for bringing us the PuSh previews.
Thank you guys.
Of success, however you measure that, as we've learned from Vivek, for a successful PuSh festival this coming year. So
and thank you guys for hosting this. Like, I think it's amazing what VocalEye has done, providing a platform, during these times. And yeah, kudos to Steph and Rick and Donna and you and the whole team and all the volunteers.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. All right, friends, with that, we're going to end our recording and say goodnight.
VocalEye, vocaleye.ca. Special thanks to our funders, the Canada Council for the Arts, the British Columbia Arts Council, the Province of British Columbia, and the City of Vancouver.